Bernie, how are you,
Oh,
mate?
I'm fine, Chris.
Bernie, how you doing?
I'm fine, mate. How are you? Good?
Yes, yes. Sorry, I was manning the technology there, and bootnecks and technology never going to go well, is it?
Tell me about it, mate. Yeah, I'm still struggling. It gets
Yes,
worse as you get older. If that's any consolation.
yes, yes. It is.
Yeah,
It is. I was just playing the intro to the last time you came on the show.
yeah.
So it was your last book. So friends out there, apologise for any confusion. Um, Also, it's confusing that you're looking at the name WT Delaney on your screen, but we know the author WT Delaney better as Agent Bernie on this show. Bernie, former
Yeah.
Royal Marines Commando, very long and distinguished career, and then went on to be, well, let's just say to work with agents, the
Mm.
agencies in the Middle East, and to handle assets, I guess we're going to say. And Bernie, the last time you came on the show, I think people found it fascinating. It's a side of life, isn't it, that not many really get to see.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, but I suppose it's like anything. If you're actually doing it, it's no big deal. It's like all these things that you. My experience in life is um, everything is a challenge, and everything is seems an insurmountable challenge. But once you get to grips with it, it's a bit like being in Baghdad. In the sort of in the days of the press and stuff like that, or any other really dangerous place I've been to. It's never quite as bad when you get on the ground. And I suppose that side of life is exactly the same, really. The only thing I would say is I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, you know, it was a very, very interesting job. And people read spy stories and they read about agent handling and they read about this, but they forget that, you know, the central tenet of the whole thing is trying to save lives, rather than take them. That was our raison d'etre, really. Just trying to stop, British soldiers being killed, civilians being killed in Northern Ireland, and then when we went out and we done similar jobs in, um, Iraq and then Afghanistan, exactly the same criteria applied. It wasn't it wasn't James Bond, um, you know, silencer on the pistol. Left that for other people. you know, we were just there. We were just there processing information, turning it into intelligence, and human was just one way of doing that.
What's You must have had some close calls then, Bernie, over the years. Can you share some of them
Oh,
with us?
yeah, yeah, very close calls. I
I mean,
suppose,
I should just say we had Duncan Faulkner on the show for I
yeah,
think the third or fourth time the other day.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and Duncan wrote this follow up to his SBS book, First Into
yeah,
Action. This is called First Into Action Again. And bloody
yeah.
hell, it starts off with him being blown up in a hotel in the Middle East. And he,
That was the Hammurabi Hotel. Uh, was it the Hammurabi Hotel? No, it wasn't. It was the Al Hamra Hotel, and we set up all the security for that. Um,
is that
and that was where I
Iraq,
worked from.
Bernie?
Yeah, in Iraq, in Baghdad,
Yeah.
just across the bridge, just across the 16th of July bridge. And it was a really good setup. The main agency for that building that put it together was NBC News, um, and 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 Duncan there was obviously there at the same sort of time. I was actually on leave when that happened. Yeah, they drove a suicide bomb into a big suicide bomb into their barriers at the back, but we had them big um, walls, what they called T walls, and knocked one of them over. Some guys came in, attacked the place, but we trained up the guard force, and the guard force sort of took care of them, really, you know. But that was, like I say, I was lucky I was on leave then.
Yeah. Duncan's room took the full force of the blast, and he was in the room at the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he would have been on that side of the hotel. We also had other agencies there. I mean, obviously it was a joint effort. We had. I was looking after the New York Times there as well, NBC News, Fox News. Yeah, it was a strange time, a very strange time, and that's where you see the other side of warfare as well. You know, the just not knowing any time. You know, and when you're with a news crew, you're there to make decisions on their security, their safety and security, and sometimes they don't like the decisions to make. You know, because you can just turn around and say that is not a good idea. You know. Or could we do it this way? You know, I think myself, Duncan, and there's lots of other guys who are all over there at the same time. They work for CNN. We had some really good bootnecks over there as well. Quite a few regiment lads knocking about. And it was just a one man. You were the security guy, you were the advisor, and you were out with the news team. So you're an integral part of the news team. You know, you were there just to make their job, simpler. You know, to think of ways that they could do a job without actually, stacks of smoke and straight up the middle. You know, which they're inclined to do, mate. To be honest, yeah. But you know, the problems you've got with bombs is the same as we had in Northern Ireland. It was secondary devices, it was come-ons, it was all sorts of stuff, you know. And of course, the news crews, very experienced guys, great people, very brave people, probably too brave in some ways. They would always they'd always want to get out there straight away, you know. And you'd be saying, hang fire, have we thought of this? Have we thought of that? Have we thought of this? And you had an amazing amount of power, actually, because the main people that run the insurance and everything came through our company, you know. So, you know, if you said, you always tried to do exactly what they wanted to do, but you tried to do it in a safe manner. You know, you could never say, we're not doing it, but you could say, listen, this is a better way to do it. What if we'd done it this way, you know? Yeah. So I'll give you an example of that. You know, vox pops were the big things with the media. So all it is you pull up and you talk to the man in the street. Okay. Now, of course, in London that's okay, but it's not too good in Baghdad, you know. So what we'd do is we'd send a couple of local fixers out, with some $20 bills, and say to people, stand here. You know, this is he's a news vendor or somebody interesting. You know. A shopkeeper. Listen, at some time tomorrow, somebody's going to come round, and you'd never give them a time or a date, or you give them a general day when they're coming round, but never a time. And say at some stage in the morning, somebody's come round. Will you talk to him? Here's $20, and then you just go round and you do all your vox pops in about half an hour, you know, and then be safe back in the hotel, instead of stopping people in the streets and drawing attention to yourself. It was a dangerous time, mate. Route Irish was a big thing then, where to get from the hotel we were in up towards the airport, there was guys getting killed every day, you know. And especially when the Iranians brought out in these EFPs, explosively fired projectiles, you know. Which were actually, one of them was featured in another book I'd done. But the idea is, it's finely engineered copper cone, and in that copper cone, you've got your explosives, okay? And because it uses what we call, explosives, but the Monroe effect, you know, any reaction causes the opposite reaction. It goes out in a sharpened cone, and this thing would just slice through an armored vehicle and literally destroy everybody in it. And I lost count the amount of times guys got taken out like that, military and other friends of ours from news teams, you know. So it was a dangerous time, mate, but exciting.
Bernie, I've got a few things going through my head. So the secondary device, can you explain for our friends out there why that's relevant to us military people?
Yeah, certainly. So if you have a bomb, you decide a terrorist. Terrorism's always about not just doing a deed, but doing it publicly, and to make a statement, if you like, you know. So there's three things in terrorism. There's the murder, there's the incident itself, and there's the audience, and they need that triangle to all come together, you know, for a perfect terrorist outrage. So obviously what they do is they put their primary device in, you know, it might be a police vehicle or something like that, and then they would plant another bigger device for people turning up later, like the first responders, you know, the police, the press, these sort of people. So it gets more of a profile. Okay. It happened during my time. I think it was probably before you. Well, I know it was before you joined the Corps, mate, because you're not as old as me. But Warren Point was a thing for the parachute regiment. You know, it was a primary device. The IRA knew where they'd take cover, or thought that's where they would take cover if they were in that position, and then had the second device there. Okay, they also had a device for the helicopter coming in, so it was, you know, a perfect terrorist attack, really. You know,
and that was the parachute regiment, Bernie, wasn't it?
Yeah, at Warren Point. Yeah,
yeah.
I think it was 76, but I can't really say, but it was in the 70s anyway.
Yeah, I think it was 79.
79, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at just showing it on the internet here. Yeah.
So that was the typical thing about a primary and a secondary and even a tertiary device. You know, once you've got troops in the zone, then, you know, all it is pressing the button, isn't it, mate? You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't take a lot of guts to do that. You know.
And you talked about shaped charges.
Yeah.
Or warheads.
Yeah.
Bernie, do you know much about depleted uranium? What's the relevance of that? Why do we hear about that in war
because
zones?
that's a different thing, okay? Because all ordnance, okay, uses that theory to propel, you know, a charge. Depleted uranium is the stuff that will go through a tank, you know, a slug that will go through a tank, you know, like butter, really. I don't know whether it's heavier material. I'm not a scientist, but I know there's lots of it knocking around in battlefields all over the place, you know. So if you've got a kiddie out in Iraq, tell him not to pick up any bits of kit, you know what I mean? Because it could be very dangerous. Yeah, and again, nobody thought there was anything wrong with that. But then again, nobody thought there was anything wrong with napalm in the 60s, you know. So it's just the way things are, really, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
So every projectile, like an RPG, for instance, yeah, uses the same Monroe effect, you know, where you've got a shape charge that actually inverses itself, you know, so that if you've got a cone, the cone goes the other way and can actually penetrate, you know, thick armor. Yeah. And then the later RPGs that they were using in that they got from Iran, the RPG 27, they had double charge in them, you know, so they have a double shape charge, so it could batter its way through a tank, you know. I remember in Basra they took a Challenger out with one, and then they didn't know whether that was like the Iranians' weapon testing or or whatever, you know. That killed a couple of guys. I think guy lost his legs. Yeah, it's all very sad, Chris, because at the end of the day, um, uh, it did make a jot of difference, you know, in Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever. You know, all these guys, all our mates who went out there. Let's face it, they're soldiers. They quite enjoyed it. You know, I enjoyed Iraq. I enjoyed Afghanistan. I must admit, not because I'm a bloodthirsty oaf. It's because it was an interesting environment to operate in. You know, and you felt like you were on live. You know, like you were on the. I talk about in my book really. It's when you're in that outer zone of existence where everything is so real, you feel like you're really living. And that would be in something, and horribly enough, you know, it's usually when it's really exciting. And when things get really exciting for the likes of me and you, and you're living on the edge, that's where things could go either way, you know. So I think, you know, Duncan will know all about it as well, you know. It doesn't have to be extreme. It doesn't have to be people shooting at you or diving away from a bomb or something. But, you know, we've all done that. That's all happened to us. It's, say, when you're driving down a dark road in South Amar and you're going to do your job, you know, so you're going to do some agent handling or whatever you're going to do. I won't talk about it too much. But, you know, and you know there might be 12 blokes just around the corner, you know, and you've got your weapon with you, you've got your personal weapon, you've got your car weapon, and you're thinking, fucking hell, I hope it goes off tonight. It's like, and that's really living on the edge. And it was the same, of course, in Afghanistan. It was the same in Baghdad with the media. You know, you never knew what was going to happen. You know, you rolled out your car, you just made sure that you done everything, you had all the right kit, you know, and you're making decisions on the run. You know, nobody was saying to you, this is the way you're going to do it, because you are the boss. You know, you are the person running that. And it was a great situation, mate. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know Duncan did as well. Yeah. He was over the same time as me. We sort of, I think we when I was down at Poole as an attached rank doing the unarmed combat for the service, the special boat service, he was, I think he was off with a deck then. So he was doing a similar job to me in Ireland, but a different skill, you know. So he would have been on the surveillance side rather than the handling side. Yeah, interesting, mate. You know, it is interesting. And then, you know, sometimes you get up and it's just life so ordinary, and you just think, and I suppose that's why I write books. You know, that's the closest I get to it now, mate, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you touched on something there, didn't you? I mean, it in the military, it can be a career like no other, can't it? I mean, 90% of it was pretty boring, and I can't always remember, like, we just wanted to be at home, didn't we? Just wanted to go home for the weekend.
Yeah, of course we did.
You know, it was shifting tables or doing something a bit shit. But that little bit of excitement, in fact, the actual exciting stuff it's minuscule in your whole career. And I reckon a lot of people serve a whole career and don't see any action.
Oh, no, definitely. Yeah. I mean, like Winston Churchill said, I think war's 99% boredom, 1% extreme excitement that can get you killed, you know. And I think, do you know, I think the course changed in lots of ways. Whereas I think the guys are a bit more appreciated now. You know, I think they've got the right kit, and they tend to have a decent training program. You know, I mean, in the units then it was like in between stuff. You know, I don't know. As you know, it's like weapon training, couple of periods, do your fizz in the morning, and that's due, really, isn't it? And like you forget all these things like picking up cigarette butts outside the guard room, and shite like that, or yeah.
A mate of mine left the SBS.
Mm-hmm.
He was on selection. It's a
Yeah,
long time, isn't it? The extended
yeah. Oh,
selection,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they got told to pick up litter, and he walked off the course. He
Yeah,
said
I mean, yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't join the SBS to be told to pick up litter. Sorry.
yeah,
He
yeah. I
actually
mean,
sorry to just
yeah,
in case people listening know the guy I'm talking about, they'll also know he then went on to become an ML, and then he
yeah.
went back to the SBS, and from what I remember anyway, yes.
I could actually concur with his opinion there, because when you get guys of that caliber, I mean, I was at Paul for a couple of years. I went there for 2 weeks under the Colonel Mike Hitchcock, the Colonel there. Funny story, actually. I got a phone call when I was at RMR Bristol as a PSI. So I was sort of unarmed combat guy in the Corps. Yeah, I used to do it with a bloke called Trog Royal, who sadly died 20 years ago now. Amazing guy, a reservist colour sergeant who was hard as nails, mate. He's mentioned in my book here as well. Um, you know, Trog was just a legend. So we had a run of training some really good people. Like we trained some of the HMSU guys in Northern Ireland, the E4A guys. It was just after the two corporals were snatched in West Belfast. And forgot I can't remember their names, but basically it had a very, very big effect on anybody who was doing anything in civilian clothes, So we went around all these units teaching them unarmed combat and stuff like that. Pistol disarming drills and improvised weapons and 101 other things. And I got this call, and it was a guy with a very posh accent, and he said, "Hello," he says, "Is that Colour Sergeant Plunkett?" I said, "Yes." "And who's this speaking?" And they'd been winding me up like for a couple of days, He said, "This is Colonel Mike Hitchcock from the Special Road Service. Would you come down to Paul?" And I just turned around and said, "Fuck off." I just thought it was one of my mates winding us up. And then I got a call back about 10 minutes later from the RSM, from SBS RSM. He said, "Bernie," he said, "Mate," he said, "Colours," he said, "for fuck's sakes," he said, you just told the CO to fuck off." Anyway, he phoned me back and we arranged this training session. So me and Trog went down there. We spent a couple of weeks and I ended up there for 2.5 years. So, and that's how I sort of met so many shaky boats guys. And it's different. I mean, they are superbly fit. They're very motivated people. And I think the main difference with me is they're happy. Do you know what I mean? It's a happy environment. It's happy. Everybody's got a smile on their face, and it was a joy to be there. From 6 o'clock PT to sitting in the mess that night. It was just a fucking good place to be. Yeah, I loved it. I really did. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Corporal Howes and Corporal Wood, wasn't it?
Yeah. House and Wood. Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember that. That was just God. That was just bad, wasn't it? That was that. Do you want to tell our friends out there what happened? Because I remember this
Well,
was
basically, yeah, these guys were techs and they were working with what would have been on special duties, but they weren't special duties guys. They were techs, and what I think probably happened was, one guy was showing the other guy around, and either he got confused with the roads. They didn't obviously read the booking out board, which would have told him there was an out of bounds area, but they drove into an IRA funeral. Now, it was only, I think, 2 weeks after, it was either the Gibraltar killings or Michael Stone. I think it might have been Gibraltar killings. I'm not sure, where they slotted the RA team in Gibraltar. But whatever happened, I mean, the crowd went absolutely, they just tore them to pieces, really. And I wouldn't even just go into the graphic details of it too much, because, I've got a feeling, I wouldn't like it if it was my relations to talk about that, but all I can say is that the video that people didn't see was graphic, and it wasn't good, So I don't know. In one way, it was a terrible thing to happen. In other ways, after that, if you were doing special duties, after that, you were driving in a car, you knew what the consequences were, so you knew that you had to use your weapon, None of this, I might get into trouble, you knew what these people were capable of. And you can't dress it up. It was just savage. It was brutal, nobody deserves to die like that.
Yeah, well, it was all filmed from the helicopter, wasn't it? And then they showed half of it on the TV news, obviously. And it's funny. It was I say it's funny. That's the wrong choice of words, but it happened around Penny Lane. Yeah, which is a Beatles song, isn't it? Penny Lane.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And I can remember patrolling past Penny Lane it was during my time I spent with M Company. I went to Lima Company very shortly after.
Well, that low brick wall, the low brick wall that goes across there, they were chucked over that. Actually, we shouldn't talk about it. We shouldn't talk about it, mate, because there might be relations listen to this, and just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Same as lots of people die in acts of terrorism. It's just one domino hits another domino, and you are where you are, and you're in the shit. And it could happen to anybody. I mean, sort of, I can remember times in Northern Ireland where it could have happened to anybody.
Did you know Olive Security?
Yeah, I worked with Olive. Yeah, quite a lot actually. Yeah. I'm trying to think out who run it. Oh God, what was his name? But yeah, there was a couple of big security companies. We worked for Centurion, and then I worked for Pilgrims. Have you heard of Pilgrims?
No,
they were an SAS company, really. I think I was the only bootneck in it. I think, and I was the ops manager in Baghdad, and I think, they were a great bunch of lads. I got a lot of time for the regiment. They were really, really decent lads, and quite, on side. I didn't get any crap for not being, regiment or whatever. They just accepted me for what I was and what I'd done. But they were good lads, yeah. And all these people that me and Damien know, they're people that we bumped into all the time during our sort of security time. I mean, like you meet a guy in Northern Ireland, and then you see him 15 years later in Africa, in Mozambique, and you say, "Where the fuck you been?" Yeah, it was a good time. I must admit, I look back and I think, I've been very lucky, and B, I've had a quite an exciting life, and that's why I suppose I've sort of I put my efforts into writing, because a lot of people write about stuff. Okay, they write, they write about agent handling, or they write about gangsters, or they write about, but they've got no knowledge of it. I mean, it's all from Google, you know. You can read a really good book, and you say, well, this guy must know what he's doing, but no, he hasn't. What I like to do is I like the guy to sort of get inside my head in the book. Do you know what I mean? So I talk about concepts, some of the training, some of that sort of stuff, you know, motivations. Motivation's a big one. What makes somebody do something, you know? Yeah. What made you join the Corps? What made me join the Corps? You know, I mean, I could have gone the other way completely. You know, I could have I probably ended up in prison, mate, to be honest. The sort of guys I was running with, you know, I would have done. You know, I was sort of I was a bit wild when I was a kid, you know. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because the combat stress have just brought out this video. Apparently they're putting it on the TV, and they're talking about, you know, all these soldiers go to war and they bring back this trauma and and someone quite rightly on Twitter wrote underneath, no, the soldiers have the trauma from before they join the forces. Then they join the forces and don't deal with that trauma. Then they get dumped in Civvy Street and all the trauma comes back. And I thought that was a bloody good effort. It's only the second person in 55 years on this planet that nailed it. The other person was in a podcast the other day. One of the two directors of Save a Warrior UK.
Yeah.
And in the US, Bernie, they call it the thing behind the thing. And it's the fact that everyone's got this misguided thing about servicemen, that we fall on our ass because of like the trauma we experience in conflict. And whereas what the Americans have recognised, or certainly some of the charities, is like you say, we all come from quite, not all of us, but a lot of us come from pretty challenging, you know, challenging backgrounds. And
you know, but I think this is life in general now, isn't it? It's always a fucking excuse. Sorry for the swearing, by the way. But you know, there's always an excuse. There's always something that went wrong, you know, in my childhood, or you know, I couldn't do this, or I couldn't do that, or everybody makes excuses for themselves. I joined the Corps because I wanted to join the Corps. Okay, I joined the Corps because I thought it would be the best thing I could do. You know, I mean, the only thing I had any sort of talent for, I mean, yeah, English was good, you know, but my violence was better. Do you know what I mean? And I thought, you know, parable of the talents, I'll join the Corps, and it worked out okay. But I despair of people. They're always trying to peel back to find out it's somebody else's problem. It's not. It, you know, I deal with what, you know, if ever I get one of those sweaty nights where you know everything's going off and you're trying to change a mag that isn't there, and your wife's going mad, she's decided to sleep in the other room because you keep shouting out and everything. That's because you've done what you've done. Live with it. You know what I mean? Live with it. You know, I think a lot of this stems from Afghanistan. You know, because when I was, I think I had 4 contacts in, I don't know, nearly best part of 7 years in Northern Ireland, both, you know, on conventional tours. 2 of them were in Crossmaglen, and special duties and all the rest of it. You know, I mean, that's, you know, that's hard to live with. Okay, but it's not. I mean, it's quite benign, isn't it? Really, when you think of it, you're only expected to you know do that. The problem with Afghanistan, when I was co-located with the British Army and the US Marines in Afghanistan. So I was there. I was at the forward operating bases. I could see these guys going out, and when I was with 4-5, they were going out, and they were 4-5 was a parent unit, which was the guys that I was with. In as much as I'd done that job for about 4 years, and they were just one of the units to come through. But it was great for me because that was my first unit in the Corps. You know, I was an 18-year-old, 19-year-old when I was in it, and I could see these guys down in Nari Siraj and places like that, guys from 4-2, your old unit, who were having 3 or 4 contacts a day, and that's World War II. That's World War II. You know, rations of fear. Do you know what I mean? And I know why some of them guys didn't do well afterwards. But then again, it's always afterwards, because when they're in the Corps, they're okay because they're with other people that have got joint experience. They know what it's like to do that. You know, I talked about that very edge of existence, that sort of eerie sort of place where you don't know whether you're going to live or die. I mean, some people get hooked on that, you know. Extreme sports guys, you know. I mean, you should know about it. You know what I mean? It's just, yeah, it's addictive. And then all of a sudden they're outside. They feel they haven't really achieved what they should have done. They miss their mates. And they fall into a general sort of malaise because they compare themselves. They compare themselves to other people around them, and the other people around them haven't done what they've done, you know. So they're trying to work in a factory with a guy who knows absolutely fuck all about what he's gone through or whatever. They don't spend enough time among people. I wouldn't generalize on this, but, you know, I think people that have problems like that tend to want to cut the Corps out of their lives rather than to become more part of it, you know, because the support mechanism in the Royal Marines is absolutely brilliant, mate. You know, like Phil Gilby and people like that. You know, if you've got a problem, they'll sort it out for you, you know. Having said that, there's still lads, you know, take their own lives and stuff. I understand in a way. I understand why that is. It's because they feel like they've been cut adrift, and they feel like they haven't got back it. I've always thought about it in a different way. Everything that I've done in my life, whether it be like training, commando training, any special duties training, any selections I've done, pass or fail, I've looked at them as psychological, physical, psychological, mental body armor. You know, when you've been fucking cold, when you've been really fucking hungry, if you're doing some job that you don't like 20 years later, you're talking, well, that ain't that bad. It's quite a decent little job. At least I got a roof over my head, you know. I'm getting paid some money. Yeah. But I mean, getting back to the book, that's part of the thing with it. I mean, there's a character in this book who is actually who was a friend of mine, you know, who ended up as a South London gangster, you know, but he'd gone down to the recruiting office with me to join the Corps, you know, and then got a bit pissed off because we had to wait. Then he walked out. He ended up in Wandsworth, and I ended up in the Royal Marines, you know. Billy Whiz, we called him. Absolute character, you know. Yeah. It'd give the Royal Marines a good run for their money, I'll tell you, mate. It would have been a Sergeant Major's nightmare. A social hand grenade. Yeah.
And tell us, Bernie, because you worked on the doors while you were serving.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. Totally illegally, of course. But I just come back from 4-1. I just left 4-1 Commando. It got disbanded. So the bad side was everybody else went down the Falklands, and I was stuck down at HMS Warrior, which was in Northwood, and it's where the nuclear deterrent is. So the Royal Marines do the armed guard there. So I was a watch commander, and so I seen the Falklands War on the wall of the war room downstairs, So I'd be walking past and come up the thing, and the guys would be looking there, and they'll say Goose Green, 2 para towards Goose Green, with a little arrow, and then 2 days later it'd all go off. Yeah, that was disappointing. But during that time, everybody had a job as well, because it was a watch system. So you had like so many days nights, so many days, and 5 days off, or whatever it was. I can't remember now. I don't know, it might mean 10 days off. And it was good, a lot of time off. And guys were working in factories doing all sorts of stuff, because the money was shit in the Corps at the time, especially if you're a married man. It wasn't there. So we sort of developed a little security business of our own, and we got the contract for. It wasn't a contract. We didn't sign a contract, but we got the job looking after a place called Amaretto's, which was down on the by the Polish War Memorial, not far out of Ruislip, down that way, and it was on the main North Circular Road, basically. It used to be the old BOAC. That goes back BOAC, before BO, sort of club, so it had a pool and all the rest of it. It was meant to be this new super club, and it got some good clientele, because it was every gangster in London went to it, both sides, and because Marines were on the door, they didn't feel threatened, and of course it was just after the Falklands, so everybody thought, oh God, they're good lads, and some memorable nights there, with it sort of nearly going off, and other times really did go off. I can remember one time we were in there, and it was like, oh mate, it was party time. Everybody was popping champagne, and it was well, what's going on? And then like 2 days later, you heard it was Brinks Matt. So yeah, and they weren't bad blokes. They weren't bad blokes. They were pretty decent fellas. Just down a different path than me and you, basically. And that's what life's like, isn't it? I mean, you choose your path, and you might meander a bit, but if you keep onto the right side, you'll be okay. Well, some people go on the other side, and it's a different career. It's the dark side. It's the they a guy doesn't isn't an armed robber. He doesn't think, I'm a bad man, I'm an armed robber. He thinks, fucking hell, I enjoyed that. That's his little bit of that feeling that you get when you jump out of aircraft, or you on the other side of a shooting or whatever, and it's addictive. So you get habitual criminals.
Working the doors then, back then, Bernie, was a bit different to what it is now, isn't it?
It was full on, actually. I would say with the majority of normal people, even really rough guys, even the old jippos and people like that, they were open to reason. It's all dependent on the way you treated them. If you treat them with respect, you got respect. But when it went off, it it was just like, it was all hands to punching stations, mate. It was just like there was no control. And these guys would fight with swords, cavalry swords, fucking knives. There was guns, there was fucking everything. There's a scrap scene in here actually that is based on one of those nights. But yeah, it was an interesting time. I'll tell you what it was. It was Margaret Thatcher. she unleashed this money that just was spreading everywhere, you know. I mean, you know, we talk about the yuppies made the most of it and all the rest of it, you know, but, you know, there was yuckies, you know, young urban criminals that used to get, you know, would be as well off as anybody, you know. I mean, you had guys who would buy a brand new Mercedes, you know, go out, smash it up. Because they had no insurance, they'd buy another one the next day, you know. It was just like there was money everywhere. There was enthusiasm. And that's what I'm saying. You know, Britain's not what it used to be. You know, London's not, there's no enthusiasm. Nobody's enjoying themselves. You know, it's all woes. And I don't know whether it's attitude or whatever. I know it's not young people because, you know, I go down to Limpston. It's the same really good lads that we've had in the corps forever. You know, they're a bit bigger now. They all look like fucking rugby players. They all like massive. You know, and I was like 10 stone soaking fucking wet. But and they're brighter. You know, they're more middle class. I know that sounds really weird in a sort of classist sort of way, but they are, aren't they? You know, they're a bit more intelligent than we were. You know, so it's a different sort of person. So, but the caliber's brilliant, mate.
I just want to get back to the nightclub thing because I find it fascinating. Yeah. I remember, I remember watching it down Union Street. All the number of Marines from 4-2 that were on the doors down there. I'm thinking that I've got 3 faces I'm looking at in my head now. I won't say their names, but I mean, I remember one night this guy was pissing around in the club, and if I say Jan, I know a lot of people watching will know who I'm talking about. Lots of Janners, but this one particular Jan, he was hard as nails, and he just he grabbed this guy, turned him around so his back was against the fire exit, and then he just headbutted him out the fire exit. The guy didn't know what hit him. I mean, it wasn't good behaviour. I'm not trying to defend it. It was fucking evil. But he nutted this bloke out through the fire exit, and then he just shut the door, turned around like that, went back to watching the crowd, and you could see like a couple of like his Marine buddies who were drinking in the club went, you know, like I mean, the bloke was being a twat, you know, but I was just thinking, you got to be careful, Bernie, haven't you? You know, because
oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we had to be careful then because I mean there was lots of guns and lots of knives knocking about. I got shot at twice. I was there. I was there one night, and my mates from that time will know this story. But we had a run-in with a local firm. Now, the thing about a door, okay, is, you know, I'll say you were getting paid £25 a night. I don't know what the equivalent now is, but it's probably 120 or 50 or something. You know, it's a lot of money. And that was just one person. So if you had 5 people, you know, it's 125 quid a night. Over a month, that's a lot of money, you know. And of course, what people were doing then, a lot of the gangs then were into drugs and all sorts of taxi firms, taking taxi firms over. They were nasty bastards, mate, you know. The gang side of it wasn't pleasant, you know. Gangs terrorize as much as terrorists, you know. That's what it is. It's urban terrorism, really, you know. I mean, they're there because they want to terrify, they want fear. And this certain firm, I won't say the firm, Western Security, but they'd lost the don't worry, mate, it's long gone. And might I say, if there's any firms out there called Western Security, okay, we are not referring to you. This is an ancient firm, you know. And these guys were proper pikey gangsters. You know, they were hard boys. You know, they were hard boys. They actually, you know, there's lots of second generation, third generation gypsy families that used to run North London at that time, and these guys were affiliated to them, and they just lost a contract in Wembley they'd hit a punter around the head with a baseball bat and put him in hospital. So the police closed the club down. So they were looking for another club. So we came into their sights anyway. Next thing I'm getting phone calls saying, you know, we're after you, we're doing this, we're doing that, or, you know, I hear you beat up my brother and all this, you know. Oh fuck, it's going to start. So anyway, at the end, the two main guys from this family came to see me, but I wasn't on the nightclub door. I was on the sports side, you know, because there was tennis courts and all sorts of stuff there. And these guys, I thought, oh fuck me, they're going to go. Anyway, and these guys were like proper hard pikeys, you know. I mean, they and I was like, I suppose I was 27 at the time. I think these guys were in their 40s, you know. They were big old lumps. And I think it's probably the first time I thought, I'm going to have to fight my life here, you know. This is bad. Anyway, cut a long story short, I got the drop on them, you know.
Oh. Sorry, folks, we had a bit of a glitch then. Bernie, we were talking about the working the doors, weren't we? And you're saying you got some big old lumps. Yeah.
So, the majority of the bad boys then in North London were second, third generation gypsies, basically, you know. Well, what that meant was they lived in wherever they lived, whatever council house or house. I mean, some of them lived in beautiful houses, mate, at the end, to be honest. But it gave them, it sort of gave them a different cultural background. So, I mean, a gypsy fella, okay, fights from the age of about 10, mate, you know, seriously. And a lot of these guys would be bare knuckle sort of guys and stuff like that. They weren't for the faint hearted. You know, these guys were strong, you know, and they were fearless, absolutely fearless, you know. And you knew you were in trouble with that particular thing. The other half of London, South London, then was run by a Turkish family, which were equally nasty, you know. And they used to they'd be up from that side of town. So our place was sort of a free fire zone, really, in as much as an opposite of a free fire zone, where people from different parts of the warring factions could come, and they just sort of, they didn't feel threatened, you know. They just used to have quite a good time, I think. Tuesday nights was gangster night, we used to call it. It was just normal punters the rest of the time. So these guys came on a Tuesday night, and anyway, I had a scrap. I'd done really, really well, actually. I mean, it just worked brilliantly, headbutt, and just, you know, it was really good. And the fight went outside into outside. There was about 6 of these guys who had arrived with them. They had a big Jaguar XJS and all the rest of it. And anyway, without going into too much thing, I got hit with a baseball bat, managed to get off them, sort of fought my way out. My lads come round, the 2 doormen came round, that all went off. In the end, the police sirens thing, everybody went away. I don't know. I mean, I went to hospital. About 3 hours later, everybody's at the club, and about 30 or 40 of these blokes turn up, and they just smash the place to pieces, you know, and everybody in it, you know. I mean, like, you know, one of the guys I can remember was a big lad. He was like 6'6". His first name was Noel. I won't say his second name. He was a big Irish lad, well, no, second, third generation Irish, probably, you know, Cockney. And they said, we've seen this thing. He was like, with a big Denison smock, you know, the old parachutist smock on, and a cavalry sword coming through the door, you know. It's fucking, yeah, it was great. It was great. Anyway, I lost my job, mate.
Yeah, I was thinking when I said you got to be careful, I was thinking more like you couldn't get in trouble with your CO, could you? You know, you.
I tell you what, things were different in the Corps then, mate. You know, whereas fighting was sort of tolerated. People used to know that we done a bit of work on the doors. You always on DROs, daily routine orders. It was always you are not to do this. But everybody seemed to know. And in the end, I had to fess up. So I went in to see my officer who was in charge. It was an old LE captain, you know, like a extended service captain who was ex-sergeant major, you know. And I said, listen, I've had a bit of a problem. And the reason I had a problem was because it was an Irish family, and because it was during that time of, you know, nominally Irish. They were no more Irish than me, mate. Do you know what I mean? But because they had Irish links, and because they had links to gangsters, because it was a gangster, they were gangsters, then they made threats against my family. They tried to shoot me a week later. I'd gone to collect my wages. Obviously, we had a tout in the thing that said I was coming in, and a guy came. I seen a guy pull up in a car, got out. He's got a pistol, and I don't think he meant to kill me, because he just shouted, "Punk it!" And then he started shooting at me, and I started running through the car park and to get away, you know. But I tried to firebomb my home. So by that time, I went and fessed up. Special branch were involved because it was an Irish thing. They said, you've got to move straight away. That's how I ended up on my PT course. 1 minute I'm in London. you know,
every cloud
Jag.
and all that.
That's right.
Bernie, can you explain to us the Yardies? Do you know anything about them?
Yeah, a lot about the Yardies. They're Jamaican-based gangsters, basically. But I think our Yardie is anybody who's black, isn't it? Anybody who thinks he's black, you know, who wants to be in that sort of genre. Okay, that he'll call himself a Yardie. But the proper Yardies were guys that came over from Jamaica, and they were the guys that, you know, used to run drugs and stuff like that. Now, in my time in London, there were certain places, Church Road, Harlesden, places like that. We used to call it Little Jamaica. Them guys were nasty, you know. I mean, not nasty personally, but they weren't very good people to annoy, you know, because machetes were a big thing with them. Guns were a big thing with them. They were the guys that at the time they were getting them Mac 10 like Ingrams, you know, buying them in and getting them converted by some dodgy guy somewhere or other. And every one of them had one of them, you know. It's like, yeah, it was a sort of dangerous. Never caused me any problems, mate, to be honest, you know. Never caused me any problems. I mean, I sort of grew up I went to a school in North London where I don't know, 50% probably of the guys I went to school with were Jamaican, you know, and we got on pretty well. I don't think I never heard, you know, anything said either way, you know. We're just all in the same football teams or teams or whatever, and that's the way it should be, you know. That's proper multiculturalism, isn't it? You know, where there is no difference between people.
Yeah, it's good if it works, isn't it?
It is. Well, it did then, because it was like, what else could you do? You know, go with your mates.
Yeah.
And
no, I just thinking
you know,
that it's so many like Eastern European or what is now Central European crime syndicates in the UK.
Oh no,
now
Albanians. The Albanians were just starting to come in there, mate. You know. So and cash is the thing. It's like, you know, drug money is cash money. So you need businesses to whack that through. So all these, if you ever get your car done, you know, valeted, you know, washed, valeted, and it's cash only, that's drug money. You know, that's focusing. That's a conduit for laundering money. Barber shops, you know, if you ever wonder why there's 5 or 6 barber shops on every fucking street, it's cash money. You know, I'm not saying they're all at it. I'm just saying that this is what organised crime does. You know, nail bars, big thing now. A lot of Vietnamese people coming across because you still there, mate?
Yep, still here.
Yeah, it's my son ringing me because
Just ignore it, or we'll get cut off.
I'll ring him back. Yeah. So what I was going to say, yeah, there's lots of things, different things. I mean, like the Vietnamese like took over the sort of growing cannabis and stuff like that. You know, I think that's back with the Albanians now. But there's always something going on, mate. You know, there's always something going on. You know, and one replaces the other. You know, but London's always been like that. You know, I personally, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it at the moment, mate. You know, I live in Belfast, and for all the problems we've got over here, people speak to each other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless you're in the wrong part of the city, that is.
Bernie, let's talk about your writing then. So, what motivates someone from your background then to sit down? I mean, what was the actual moment where you thought, right, I'm going to sit down and write a book?
I'll tell you what it was, mate. Really was I decided to do some educational stuff, yeah, and I done a master's in security management. I'd done a master in terrorism studies. I enjoyed it, but it's a very, very disciplined way of writing. You know, it's like academic writing is different from anything. And then when I finished that, I thought about doing a PhD. So I inquired into it, and then I just looked at that sort of 3 or 4 years. It was going to cost me a fortune, by the way. They really milked you on it. And I thought, do you know something? I'll just write a book instead. But I wanted to write a book that I'd want to read, you know. So I wanted some factual stuff in it. I want it to be based around my world, not an invented world, you know, not a world of. I wouldn't name an author, but there's certain authors, you know, that write spy stuff that, I mean, it's invented. They never lived that life, you know. They don't know what it's about. People write about Northern Ireland, never been here. People write about Iraq, never been here. People write about Afghanistan who've never set foot on the place, and people have got opinions about all those places and haven't formed them through experience, you know. So, and the other thing is, what they say is write about what you know. So I started writing sort of military adventure, fiction, based on a sort of factual foundation, you know. So if you're reading about Afghanistan at that particular time, those things would have been happening there. You know, those forces would be happening there. Same as this book is based. That's a book there. Look, it's based on the year after the Brighton bombing, and it's about a covert operator that goes undercover to infiltrate the London gangs because the IRA using them as a conduit to facilitate their operations in thing. It's totally fictional, you know. There is no fact in it at all, apart from the basics of the clubs that I mentioned are there. The gangs that I mentioned are there. Obviously, I've changed the names. Oh, God. I can't shoot. I can't. Mate, can we stop and can I ring these people back? Because, yeah, I you know, I think a good story is a good story, you know. So there are some brilliant books out there, and it comes out of people's imagination, and that's great. But you must know as a ex-Royal Marine, you sometimes look at something on television or you read a book and you go, oh my God, that's so stupid. You know, that would never happen. Do you know what I mean? The guy is putting the wrong ammunition in the thing, or, you know, it's all that sort of stuff that really, you know, lets me down on a book. You know, it could be a brilliant book, but there'll be something stupid in it. Like, for instance, reading a really good book. I won't better say the author because he's a brilliant author, but you know, it was about there was two military types getting ready to meet an agent from the under the Berlin Wall, you know, or whatever, you know. And he said the first character was Sergeant so and so of the Special Air Service, and the other one was Private so and so. Do you know what I mean? You know, it wasn't. You know, it just. You know, for people that don't know, you know, it's trooper, it's not private, and just weapons, tactics. When you see something on television, I mean, I used to teach the room combat bit as well when I was at Poole. You know, I was a CQB instructor there, and when you see something glaringly, obviously wrong, you know, it oh God, you know, it shouldn't piss you off, but it does, you know. And I realise it's fiction, and I realise that the majority of people would totally enjoy that and wouldn't see the flaws in it. But because I seen the flaws in it, I wanted to write something that's genuine, that was authentic, that people could read it and go, you know, your mates could read it, you know, like, you know, I've got quite a few of my friends, you know, buy my books. They go, I mean, that's brilliant because you described that exactly how that happened, or whatever, you know. So there's a basic, it's fiction, but there's a basic factual part to it. You know, that's how you would do a room combat. That's how you would attach a charge. That's how you would, you know, how an undercar booby trap goes on. That's how that device could actually be, you know, put together. So it's that sort of thing, really, mate. And the rest of it is just spinning a yarn, you know, telling dits, as we say in the call. You know, it's no different, except it's got grammar.
And I'm guessing people can buy your books on Amazon. Is that the
Oh yeah,
go-to place?
Yeah, I've got my go-to place. WT Delaney. All my books are there. There's 5 books now. I've sent you the little trailer, so if you can run that at some stage, that'd be great for the latest one. It's great, mate, because it's got some 80s music on it as well.
Yeah, I've been. In fact, what I'll do is I'll play us out with it, Bernie. So,
okay, brilliant.
If you just stay on the line while I play it, and then I'll say goodbye to you properly.
Okay, mate.
But yes, thanks for coming on the show again. Massive congrats with another book, because it's not an easy thing to write a book, let alone get it edited and published. And you've done what, 4, 5 now?
5, yeah.
5, yeah. Yes. Good effort.
You talk about the editor. You know, you're talking about editing. My editor, content editor, is an ex Int Corps colonel, who's a very good friend of mine. We served together in Iraq and Afghanistan. His name's Danny. I won't say his second name, but he mate, it's just been brilliant. He has really, really been good, because I when you're writing something, and because it's coming in a big flow from your imagination, you know, you've got a tendency to repeat phrases sometimes, or do, and you need an editor. You need a decent editor, you know. And this guy is a black belt 3rd Dan English language. You know, he's Mr. Grammar. So when the whole thing is processed, um, and you know you've got a good product and you get some decent reviews, that's a big one for me. It's not so much the money, because that, you know, I don't do particularly well on them, to be honest. You know, I haven't really advertised them, so this is it. This is the start of it, Chris, with this. Yeah, my thanks to Danny, and my thanks to you, mate. And can I wish you all the best for your row?
Yes, you can. I should give it a shout out, shouldn't I? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, mate. While we're on the subject, thank you to everyone out there who sponsored us a fiver. It's all we've ever asked for, because almost everyone can afford a fiver, and up to almost £70,000 now. Shows how many
Brilliant.
good,
Brilliant.
kind people out there that are willing to, help people make changes in their life. So yeah, thank you, Bernie. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And yes, right. Hang on. I'm gonna play your video. Let me get the sound on, and then here's to the next time. Stay on the line, Bernie. But thanks again for coming on the show. Thanks everybody out there. If you can chuck us a like and subscribe and all that kind of thing, and we will see you soon. Cheers.